Hello, welcome to a new video. This is the final video of my 2024 wrap-up content. So this is my worst slash most disappointing and my favourites. I am going to chapter them so that if you don't want to watch the worst disappointing, which I'm going to do first, you can skip ahead to the best and only look at the best of 2024 for me. If I say anything you don't like about any of the books that may be negative, just know this is my opinion. I'm not saying it's a bad book. It just wasn't for me. It's really bad that I have to put that we have to put that disclaimer. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to start off with my worst and most disappointing. Some of these weren't bad books for me. I was disappointed in them. So it could be that I gave something a higher star rating, but I was disappointed. And some, it wasn't good for me. So I'm going to do those first and then I'll do the best. So skip ahead if you don't want to see my worst and most disappointing, because here we go. So first up, we have The Long Game by Elena Armas. Now, I love Spanish Love Deception, and I loved American Roommate Experiment even more. So I was so excited to get more from Elena Armas, and I went to the book signing event that she did in London, and I really enjoyed hearing her talk about it, and I was so excited, and it was just a letdown. He gave me the ick. I didn't like him, and I didn't really care for the plot. I feel like the plot would have been better if the writing had been better, but I just don't know what happened in this book, because I know Elena Armas can write good books. So I feel like this was just a dud. I think Andy recently read the sequel to this, which was originally supposed to be called The Shortlist, but it's been changed to The Fiancé Dilemma. And she really enjoyed it, I think. So I'm going to give that one a go. However, I did unhaul this and I won't be getting The Fiancé Dilemma. I'm just going to get it from the library. So yeah. Next we have one that I haven't unhauled, but I don't know if I'll reread, and it is Count Your Lucky Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur. Now, this was going great. I was having the best time with this. I was really enjoying it. And then something happens with one of the characters' family members. It was a little bit triggering for me, but it was the way the love interest reacted made me so angry, because she was bang out of line and it instantly ruined the book for me. I think this got a 3-star and it was on its way to be a 5-star. I was absolutely loving it, and then that happened and I was like, no, I don't care about this couple anymore. She messed up. She was out of order, and the other one has just forgiven her. No. She would have to grovel, and that still probably wouldn't work. I was so angry. I still am now. Next up, we have Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. This was the book that made me unhaul the duology I loved by Tessa Bailey and decide never to pick up a Tessa Bailey book again. This was awful, but it was so bad. It read like this woman has never written a book before. And the way, when we was getting his POV, the way he was just fantasizing about her in the most perviest way ever was just not it. Like, not it. And it just put me off. And also the storyline just didn't do it for me. I was just bored. So yeah, I'm never reading a Tessa Bailey book again. I unhauled It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line and Sinker, because I don't think I'm ever going to enjoy them if I reread them. So I'm just going to leave it as I read them, I enjoyed them, and that's it. They're out of my life now, which sucks, but oh well. Next is Old Flames and New Fortunes by Sarah Hogle. I was so excited to read this. And it was once again the love interest that did it. I was really enjoying this. It was such a fun, cozy read. And then he did something And based on her background that we had got, this is like one step down from like ultimate betrayal. And she just brushed it off like it was nothing. Like, you have been talking about this whole book having trauma over this thing, and you're just going to brush it off? No, no. Oh, it made me so angry. Maybe I should stop reading straight romances. Because it's always the men. Count Your Lucky Stars was an exception, because that was a woman. But it's 9 times out of 10 the men. Next up is one didn't think I'd ever put on one of these lists. It's The Soul of Ash and Blood. Ash and Blood? Yes, by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the 208th book in this world. That's what it feels like at this point. I can't actually remember if this is part of the Blood and Ash series or the Flesh and Fire series, but I have slowly descended into not caring about this series. But it's at the point, there's only like, I think 1 or 2 books left in the Ash and Blood series. So I'm going to have to finish it. But I genuinely don't care. I understand that this is a romantasy, and I've never had any issues with the level of smut that have been in these books before. But this book just fully felt like it was unnecessary. Wait, what one was this? Scrap that. What I've just said applies to a different Jennifer L. Armentrout book, but works. No, my issue with this book was that it was unnecessary. If this book had been like the first half of the book and then we'd actually got some like plot development, it would have been great. This felt like it could have been a novella that wasn't actually necessary, or like the first half of a book, because it was pointless. It just felt like a way for the author to give us the first 1 or 2 books from his point of view while it being set in the current time. And I was just like, what is the point? I've wasted my time reading this. I didn't need this information again. I've had this information. I've read the rest of the series. Make it make sense. Well, this is really getting me angry. I can't wait to get to my favourites so that I can be happy again. Next up is Seven Devils by Elizabeth May and Laura Lamb. Now, I have read an Elizabeth May book and really liked it. Since reading this, I've read an Elizabeth May book and really liked it. And I've read a Laura Lamb book and really liked it. 4-star books. This was a 2-star. This felt like they had looked at the plot of the original Star Wars trilogy and just taken it and tried to make it their own and failed. It felt like fanfic, but not done right. And I love fanfic being made into books. Like, hello, Love Hypothesis is literally there. Hurricane Wars. This wasn't it. I was so disappointed in this. I wanted a sci-fi. This isn't the type of sci-fi I wanted. Just a rip-off of my favourite series. No. No, thank you. Next up is Born of Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I actually think this might be the one I was talking about before, where it was literally smut every chapter, I think. And it's not necessary. I love a bit of smut in my fantasy romance. My romantasy, if you will. But I actually want some plot to go with it. If I wanted no plot, I would read Katie Robert. That's a lie. Even she has some plot. This just didn't progress the plot. It was just smut and then smut and then smut. I was fully skipping pages because it was just smut and I didn't care. And it was the same thing over and over again. And then there was one bit in particular that really gave me the ick. And I was like, why would you do that? He's gross. Get away from him. And I think I'm done with Jennifer L. Armentrout's smut now. But I need to finish the series because I will get a FOMO otherwise. So maybe expect more of these books in 2025s. I don't know. I might not finish it. We'll see. Next up is one you've heard me be talking about since I read it in September. It's A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. I didn't think the day would come where Samantha Shannon ended up in this list, in this half of the list, but here we are. This was not necessary. None of this book was necessary. Priory of the Orange Tree is a standalone, and as far as I'm concerned, there's no other books in that world. Oh, but there's one coming out soon. No, there isn't. As far as I'm concerned, no, there isn't. I don't want it. Take it away. Priory is a standalone and it's on its own forever. I don't need another prequel that's going to disappoint me. I genuinely did not like this. I was kind of invested in 2 of the 4 or 5 POVs. And the issue isn't how many POVs there were, because Priory of the Orange Tree has 1 million POVs and I was invested in every single one. This had 4 or 5 POVs and I cared about 2. And I say cared loosely. I kind of cared what happened to them and I kind of liked their endings. But the other characters, I can't even remember any of the characters' names in this book anymore. I can still tell you characters' names from Priory that I read 2 years ago. Could not tell you any of the characters from this that I read in September. It was just not good. So if you love Priory and haven't read this yet, just maybe don't. In case it ruins Priory for you. I don't think it's ruined Priory for me. I want to reread Priory again. I've read it twice and I want to read it again. But don't chance it. Don't chance it. Because Priory was amazing. This was terrible. Next up was The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. Now, I read two T. Kingfisher books in 2024. And one was a 5-star for me. And then one was this. There was a direction this was going in and I was so invested for it. I was accidentally reading multiple books in that week that had these vibes and had this sort of setting, which I don't want to go into what the setting is because I don't want to spoil anything. However, this then went in a completely different direction and wasn't what it was supposed to be. And I was so disappointed. It's not a terrible book. I wouldn't not recommend it. I would just say, if you start to think it's going a certain way, be ready for disappointment because that ain't it. And the ending was a bit flat. I just didn't care at the ending. As soon as there was that shift in the plot and I realised what was happening, I was like, I don't care anymore. And I was so disappointed because I was quite enjoying the humour and the characters, and then this happened and I was like, no. And then the final book on this section is Misrule by Heather Walter. Now, I loved Malice. I think it was a 5-star. It might have been a 4-star, but it was a highly rated book for me. I really enjoyed it. It should have been a standalone. I don't think the way the plot went was particularly interesting. And I was really disappointed in it. It ended up being, I think, a 3-star for me. It's not necessarily bad. It wasn't what I was expecting from it, and it was I feel like if she had gone in a different direction it would have been better, but I was bored, I didn't care, and then I was disappointed. That's not the trio you want in your book. So yeah, but that is my worst. We are now going to move on to my best because honestly, yes. Now, I have, for the last couple of years, the way I've done my best, I've had 12. My favourite book from each month. I'm doing it differently this year. I had a couple of months where my favourite book didn't really feel like a top 10. So I've done a top 10 with some honourable mentions instead, because I just didn't feel like they were favourites. So some of them didn't make it onto this list. So I think my favourite book of June didn't make it onto this list at all. It's not even an honourable mention because I don't want it there. And it's one that I actually need to reread because I don't actually think it deserved the 5-star I gave it. that should have really been on my disappointing, but I couldn't bring myself to put it on my disappointing. I'm gonna wait and see how a reread goes. We'll see. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about my favourites. So for honourable mentions, the first honourable mention is Feed. I feel like I messed up a little bit and read this in a month where it was gonna very obviously have another book that was gonna be a favourite. However, Feed by Mira Grant was insanely good. I'm gonna be reading the sequel in January and I cannot wait. I thought this book was not going to be for me because I saw people read it expecting a zombie book and were really disappointed that it wasn't a zombie book. However, then it's one of Ash's favourites, and Ash put it to me a different way. She marketed it the way it should be marketed. This book should not be marketed as a zombie book. This is a political mystery type book with zombies. Like, yes, there is a couple of parts of this book where they are trying to actively get away from zombies and having to kill zombies, and there is the always threat they're going to get bitten by a zombie and turn into a zombie. However, that is not what this book is about. This book is about how, like, the world is living with this. It's following a presidential campaign, obviously in America, and how the media portrays things. And it is so cleverly done. And I'm so glad I gave this a chance because, and I'm glad I gave it a chance knowing what type of book it is. Because if you go into this wanting a zombie book, that's not what it is. You're going to be disappointed. Whereas I went into it knowing what it was and ended up loving it. My next two honourable mentions are kind of like cop-outs because they're sequels to books that are in my top 10. So this is going to be a bit of a spoiler for two books that are in my top 10. But we have A Pirate's Life for Tea by Rebecca Thorne. It's the second book in the Tomes and Tea series. And we have The Hunting Moon by Susan Dennard, which is the second book in the Luminari series. So you're going to see books in this series in the top 10. Spoiler. Next we have Sleep Like Death by Kalynn Bayron. I cannot find my arc of this and I haven't managed to pick up the finished copies yet. I'm going to soon. Last year was an expensive year. I absolutely loved this. This was absolutely incredible. It was one of my first books I read last year and I think it overtook Cinderella is Dead as my favourite Kalynn Bayron, which I didn't think would happen. But here we are. Next we have Mistakes Were Made by Meryl Wilsner. I wasn't expecting to love this as much as I did. But it is sapphic, it's romance, and I wasn't expecting it. It's best friend's mum. Need I say more? And then the final honourable mention is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This is one I didn't think would end up here, but here we are. I really wanted this to hit my top 10, but it literally just missed my top 10. But that's okay because it's getting the honourable mention. And I will say, since starting this series in November, I have just finished book 3 and all 5 stars. Cannot believe I waited so long to read it. But I'm glad I finally have read it and I've got this pretty edition, which is the 10th anniversary edition. And I'm hoping they do the second and third books to match this. Fingers crossed. Okay, so now we move on to the top 10 favourites of 2024 for me. And in number 10, we have The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is another one. I've read the first 4 books in this series and I have loved all of them. It's one that I started the series last year and I binged that series in a few months. If I could have read them in the space of a week, I would have, but I was getting them from library. I don't have physical copy of it yet because I like these covers, the American covers, and I am aware that you can now get these covers in the UK. However, I want the floppy paperbacks and the UK don't have them, so I need to get them from the US. And it's a case of having the money because they're more expensive. So I will have physical copies of these, just not yet. But this was one that was a complete shock to me. I wasn't expecting to love this as much as I did. I had the e-arc of the first book on NetGalley from when it came out. And then I didn't read it. And then there was too much hype about it, and then I no longer wanted to read it. And then last year I was trying to get through my NetGalley TBR, so I read it and was like, oh damn, why didn't I read this sooner? Because I had the best time reading it, and I was on the edge of my seat, and I just was so invested in the characters. In number 9, oh, we have this beast of a book. We have House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas. I read this twice last year. I binged it on release day, and then I read it for Mass Along and tabbed the hell out of it. I absolutely love this book. A lot of people hate it, and I completely understand that. You know, to each their own. I disagree. It is a favourite. I will say the Crescent City series is my least favourite of her 3 series. Throne of Glass is always going to be top for me, and then ACOTAR. But this was still a very good series, and I loved the characters. Do I feel like there was maybe a bit too much back and forth with things? Yeah. But everything ties together. Everything makes sense in the end. And that's what I love about her books. So House of Flame and Shadow. Number 8 is The Whispering Night by Susan Dennard. Told you you'd see more of this series. Now, this is another series that I started last year and finished last year. The Luminaries probably would have been an honourable mention if I'd only read like the first 2 books, because The Hunting Moon would have got this spot. But because I finished the series, I was like, no, you deserve to be here. You deserve to be here, because this was my favourite out of the series. And then it was The Hunting Moon. Incredible series, so atmospheric, and I just absolutely loved the characters. And I was just rooting for them. And also the creatures in it were so well done. At number 7, we have My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. This almost gave me Love Hypothesis level feels, which is why it's not higher up than it is, but it's still on here, because I just devoured this, which is not a pun because it's a vampire book. This was what I needed. I read this in, I think, March, and this was exactly what I needed. I needed something that would give me the feels and the vibes of Love Hypothesis without having to do another reread of the Love Hypothesis, because I wanted some new books. And I read this and I was just like, this is exactly what I wanted. And I'm so happy that I read it, because it was so good. I will be doing a reread of this probably in the next couple of months, because I want to reread it and probably tab and annotate. Number 6 is The Secrets. No, it's not The Secrets. It's just Secrets of Blackthorn Hall by Cassandra Clare. So this is the Kickstarter book. This is a series of like letters and like journal entries that she started on Tumblr years ago. But I was behind, so I haven't read any of them. But it was so much fun being able to read this and just being back with these characters, because The Dark Artifices is my favourite like trilogy. So being back with Emma and Julian was great, and getting some Thai content. I was just here for this. It was great. We got an appearance from Magnus, and it was just a fun time. So yeah. At number 5, we have The Nightmare Before Christmas by Sarah Rash. I read this because I was lucky enough to get an ARC, and I read this on my Christmas in July week, and I am so glad I did. It was the best time. I had the best time with this. You cannot give me a better idea for a Christmassy book like this, where it is the son of Father Christmas and the Halloween prince. Like, you can't tell me that's not perfect. This was great. And I loved the friendships as well as the relationship. It was the best time. Next, in number 4, we have an Ali Hazelwood. And it's Two Can Play. Yes, it's the novella. It's the novella. It's not even a full novel. It's a novella. And it's currently only available, I think, on audiobook. It is going to be coming out on ebook, and I am annoyed it's taken so long, but this is an audiobook only one, and I had the best time with this. I was so invested in their relationship. I was just like, I need a full novel of these characters, or I need them to appear in another novel, because I need more. I need more. But it was so good, I had the best time. However, not as fun as the time I had with book number 3, which is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. And speaking of 3, I read this 3 times last year. I read it on release day. I then read it when I got my US copy because I tabbed and annotated. And then I read it again because Chloe had it as a Patreon buddy read. So I read it 3 times. And I had the best time all 3 times. And I have no regrets. I did not think I would have a book with a Omegaverse in my top 10 ever. I feel like this is very tame for Omegaverse though, which I think is why I could deal with it. Because we just pretend the Omegaverse isn't there. In number 2, I will say, spoiler, there's no more Ali Hazelwood. Ali Hazelwood did not hit the top 2 last year. We're in 2025 now. And it was really hard to decide between these 2 books, which would be number 1 and which would be number 2. But after deliberating for far longer than I would like to admit on the internet, I decided number 2 would be Otherworldly by F.T. Lukens. I think if it was Spellbound that had come out in 2024, not Otherworldly, Spellbound might have just hit that number 1 spot because that is my favourite of their 4 books so far. But Otherworldly was incredible. I love how there is always some sort of like high stakes. So I don't think this could be classed as cozy fantasy, but it's on that cusp. It's so close to being cozy fantasy, but it's just that little bit too high stakes to be classed as cozy fantasy. But where the characters are concerned and where the romance is concerned, it is so cozy and the vibes are just impeccable. I have so much fun reading F.T. Lukens books that I'm just like, they make me feel so happy. And I genuinely cannot wait to reread them all. And I cannot wait for the new one that's coming out in 2025 because I just know it's going to give me the same feels as the other 4 have. And I'm just like, easily auto-buy, favourite author, guaranteed to be in my top 10. And I'm just so happy I discovered this author's books. This one was just... I loved it so much. So much. Which means number 1... is Can't Spell Treason Without Tea by Rebecca Thorne. There is someone doing works. Do you know what? It's fine. It's a Saturday daytime. This is the perfect time for them to do works, even if it does interrupt my filming. It's fine. We're just going to talk over it and ignore the background noise. Cool? Cool. Yeah, this was exactly what I wanted from a cozy fantasy. Now, I love Legends and Lattes. That was what started me on my cozy fantasy, also sapphic cozy fantasy. But this just like upped it that level because I was so much more invested in these characters and their tea shop and just every single thing about these characters. And I mean, you already saw book 2 got an honourable mention. I can tell you now, book 3 is already on its way to be my favourite book of 2025. And it's not even out yet. I have read it. I'm not just saying it. I have read it. And book 4 is also coming out this year. So it's probably going to be another year where both books end up on my list. But I can't wait to reread this one. It's one of those that I finished it and then I wanted to read it again. I haven't felt that way about a book since Love Hypothesis. That's the level of love I have for this book. I'm very happy. I'm gonna shove this book in everyone's face because it's amazing. I've already got Tori on reading it and Tori loved it. I think I got Siobhan on reading it and they loved it. So me and Andy are making it our mission to get everyone to read and love this. And rightly so. So yeah, that was my worst / most disappointing and my favourites. Let me know what your worst book and best book of 2024 was. As I said before, if you disagree with any of the negative comments I said, don't come for me. It's my opinion. However, I will take no slander over my favourite books. So Don't comment anything bad about those, please. But that is my final 2024 roundup content. It's done, and we're nearly at the end of January. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.